will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to section 1.
You'll hear a woman calling Laverton Arts Centre for some information. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Laverton Arts Centre. How can I help you?
Hello. I've been to the Arts Centre a few times recently, and I understand you have this scheme for regular visitors.
The Friends of Laverton Arts Centre. Yes, that's right.
I wonder if you could tell me a little about it. I mean, how much it costs and what benefits it offers, things like that.
Certainly. Well, first of all, the good news is that we've recently changed the scheme. It used to cost £15 a year, but now it's free. All you have to do is fill in an application form. You can either come to the Arts Centre and do that here, or you can go to our website and apply online.
And so what are the benefits of joining?
There are actually quite a few. As a friend of Laverton Arts Centre, you'll receive a newsletter every 3 months with information on all the forthcoming events.
That sounds useful.
You also get priority booking for shows and concerts in the main theatre.
Can you explain how that works exactly?
Yes. What that means is that when tickets go on sale, for the first 2 days they're only available to Friends of the Arts Centre. So, as long as you book early, you can make sure you get seats.
Great! Do you ever offer discounts to Friends of the Centre?
Under the old system, when you had to pay to be a member, we did. Under the new system, there won't be any discounts for shows in the main theatre or films at the Arts Cinema. Having said that, we will be offering some discounts to members for performances in the small theatre. There'll be information about this in each issue of the newsletter.
I suppose I can find that information online as well, can I?
Absolutely. Actually, we're redoing our website at the moment. Right now, there actually isn't a special section for Friends of the Arts Centre on the website. Once the site's been redesigned, there will be. You'll be able to put in your username and password and enter a special section just for you.
It sounds excellent. Are there any requirements, though? I mean, as a member, do I have to do anything?
Yes, sorry, I forgot to mention that. There are no formal requirements at all, though obviously we have this scheme to encourage people to attend events here regularly. So we ask that you attend at least 4 events a year, whatever they are, if you possibly can. Nobody's going to count, though, and it's totally up to you.
That sounds fair enough. Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
While you're here, we're actually conducting a short survey of people who phone up the Arts Centre. Would you mind if I asked you a few questions? It'll only take a couple of minutes.
Sure, no problem.
Thanks a lot. So, how many times have you visited Laverton Arts Centre in the last 6 months?
Well, I've only lived in the area for the last 4 months, so not that many times. 3, I suppose. Yes, that's right.
Fine. And how did you first find out about the Arts Centre?
Let me think. Oh, yes, a friend invited me to a concert, and I came with her.
Have you ever seen a film at the Arts Cinema here?
No, I haven't, to be honest. In fact, until you mentioned it earlier, I didn't realise you even had a cinema.
One more question. If we offered a free tour of the Arts Centre, including things such as going backstage to look at the dressing rooms, would you be interested in going on it?
Oh, yes, definitely. I think a tour like that would be very interesting. I'd even pay for it.
That's great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 2. Section 2. You will hear a man giving some information about transport in London. You now have 30 seconds to read questions 11 to 15.
Hello, can I help you?
Yes. I was wondering what the best way was for me to get around London.
Well, there are a lot of possibilities. As you probably realise, the main ways to get around are bus, train and tube. The Underground.
Oh.
It depends how much you want to spend. All forms of transport offer special tickets, such as cheap day returns on the trains and so on. Overall, you'll spend less on the bus, as it operates on a basic flat fare for each journey. But of course it may not go to where you need to travel to. The mainline trains only operate in the outlying areas, though a few cross London, whereas the tube has stations which are placed in central areas of the city, close to the main sites and shops. Obviously there are more bus stops, but you will probably have to change buses to get where you want, which can be inconvenient. You will find that the buses are mainly in the central areas, but some tube lines go quite a long way out of London, so you could use this for longer journeys. Having said that, the tubes do get very crowded, so you should use the train if you want to sit down. It does depend where you're travelling to.
Well, I'm living on the outskirts, but I have to travel into London to college every day, and then around London when I'm here.
OK, so time is going to be an issue for you. The tube should be fast crossing London, but quite honestly, there are so many delays that it's not very efficient. Again, the train has fewer stops, so is probably your quickest option to get to and from college. Of course, which service you use might depend on how frequent it is. I mean, the trains might only be every 20 minutes or whatever, but a timetable is published to save you hanging around. There are a lot of tube trains at busy times of day, but fewer at other times, whereas the buses run every 5 minutes through most of the day, and there are night buses. But you'll need to check out your route first.
You now have 30 seconds to read questions 16 to 20.
OK, thanks. How can I get from here to Hackney then?
Right, well, you can choose. We're here at the information office, OK? Now, next to us, on the corner of the High Street and Sweet Street, is the bus stop, opposite the bank. The bus goes all the way to Hackney, but it is a very indirect route, so it could take ages. If you want to take the train, walk down the High Street towards the city. Go past the bank, and on your left is the station, just before you get to the post office. There's a mainline service to Hackney Wick, so if you need to get into the centre of Hackney, you may need to pick up a bus when you get there. Opposite the post office, on the corner of Hart Lane, is the tube entrance. You'll see the big signs. That's probably the best way to get there, though you may have to change. It's probably best if you go and get a travel card first. To get to the ticket office, you go out of here onto the High Street. Then turn into South Street, and the ticket office is on your right opposite the cinema. Of course, you may decide it's quicker to take a taxi. But it's a long way, so I think it'll be very expensive. If you do want to get a cab, then the rank is outside here, just opposite the office.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 3.
Section 3. You are going to listen to a conversation between two students about preparing a questionnaire as part of an essay assignment. First, look at questions 21 to 24. As you listen, answer the questions.
I've never written an essay of more than 1,500 words before, Anne.
Me neither, Mark, and it scares me.
I wouldn't worry. We'll just have to pretend it's 4 essays of 1,500 words and join them together.
It says here in the assignment notes Dr. Brightwell gave us that we're to write between 5,000 and 6,000 words on some aspect of students' attitudes, backed up by our own research, which we present in the form of tables, graphs, charts or whatever, and supported by reference to the list of books she gave us. Oh, I didn't realise there had been so many social science books written about students.
Oh, yeah. There are a lot. And the questionnaire?
Yes, we have to prepare a questionnaire to gather our own data for the graphs, etc., and hand it in to Dr. Brightwell in draft form in 2 weeks' time.
2 weeks?
That's what she said, and what it says here. She says that it's better to have it checked before we go on to collect the information and start the writing.
Suppose she's right. We'd better get started then. But she didn't say how we were going to put the questionnaire together. Does it say anything in the notes?
Nope. It only says that we are limited to 4 sides of A4 and no more than 50 questions.
If that's the case, it's not that bad.
Circle M for Mark or A for Anne.
So, how are we going to do it?
Well, first we need to know who we're aiming it at. Then decide how many questions we're going to ask. I think we could have about 40 questions maximum. I don't think there's any real need to go up to the 50 limit. And I think we should keep the questions themselves very simple.
Don't worry. In my case, they will be.
We could have a mixture of question types, like multiple choice questions. Yes, no, and agree, disagree, with boxes for people to tick. If people are asked to write down anything, it's unlikely they will fill it in.
So, are we going to give this questionnaire out to people to hand in? Or are we going to just stop and ask them around the campus or on the street?
I don't really know. Did she say anything about this? No, she didn't. And there is nothing in these notes she gave us either.
I think we ought to give them out.
OK.
Anyway, it won't affect the way we design the questionnaire.
We're both doing it on different subjects, but there's nothing wrong with pooling our ideas about the mechanism of the questionnaire.
No, none. What are you doing your project on?
I've been thinking about doing something around the subject of how aware students are of world affairs. People think that we're all up to date, but I very much doubt it. It would also be interesting to compare students in different years. And you?
I'm doing something on health and sport and whether students are more or less active since they came to university.
Oh, sounds interesting. As the questionnaires can be anonymous, I'll fill in your first questionnaire for you. But I'm sure you won't be surprised by my answers.
Somehow, I don't think so.
I suggest we put together about 20 or 25 questions each and then meet tomorrow or the day after and compare them.
Are you going to type yours up?
Yeah, then I can come round to your place and we can work on them. You've got a laptop, haven't you?
Yes, and I've got some new design software so we can play around with the layout.
Brilliant. Are you any good at doing charts and things?
I know how to do simple things on the computer, but we'll sort something out.
OK.
I feel much better about all this now. It doesn't seem quite as bad as I first thought.
No, don't worry, we'll get it done.
That's the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 4. Section 4. You will hear an extract from a student's presentation about computer viruses. First, you will have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Well, good afternoon. Last week we were looking at the positive effects that computers have had on our society. This week we'll talk about one of the negatives, computer viruses. In today's session, John Upton will be sharing some of the findings of his research project. So, over to you, John.
Thanks. Mr. Yardley asked me to talk to you about the project I did from last term. Actually, it's really very rewarding to do this research project about computer viruses. OK, so what is a computer virus? Well, it is a software program that has been designed, tested and released by a human programmer with the single intention of corrupting and destroying useful programs. Put in simple terms, it's a way of causing lots of trouble for ordinary people just to be a nuisance. It's known as a virus because, although it's not a biological organism, it functions in a similar way, in that it seeks out a host, that is, a body in which to live and multiply, your computer, with the end result of destroying that host. Let's go back 50 years. In 1949, in the early days of computer technology, John van Neumann presented the first model of a computer virus program in his paper Theory and Organization of Complicated Automata. Soon after this paper was published, we find reference to a game known as Core Wars. Core Wars was initially created for intellectual entertainment by 3 Americans working on large mainframe computers. Remember, in those days computers were the size of a couple of rooms. By the 1980s, for the small sum of $2 postage, anyone could get details on how to play Core Wars, and very soon after, we see the emergence of a new pastime, one where people spent time creating programs that could escape the game and destroy other programs. In this way, the first computer viruses were born. Like their biological counterparts, computer viruses are picked up through casual habits. Virus programs are often intentionally placed within useful programs in the public domain, or they're included in software which is not official. That is, software you might have acquired on the black market, which, of course, you don't do. It seems quite hard to believe that anyone would go to this level of deceit to intentionally corrupt the data of others, but the rise in the number of computer software infections and the amount of lost data that we are seeing these days is proof that these virus programmers are going to extremes to do just that. They are going out of their way to create programs that hide inside legitimate software applications and cause all sorts of errors that the average end user will then mistake for hardware failure. In other words, they will think that the problem lies with their own computer. So, what can we do to combat these people? Well, the first thing is to realize that virus programmers succeed because people are not always careful about where they get their programs from. So, number 1, be very careful. And I don't just mean that you should be careful about the source of your software. You also need to take care with emails and avoid any messages which are suspicious looking. For instance, a message that says, "I love you," or "Win $50. So, the second golden rule is avoid trouble. Now, there are other things we can do to protect ourselves. We can try to find out exactly how the viruses work, how they accomplish their aims. In other words, we need to understand them. And, of course, there is a good selection of antivirus software available on the market now, as well as on the internet, to combat the virus plague. So another way of protecting ourselves and our computers is to be well prepared. And, before I leave you, let me just say that if you ever run into one of those virus guys, tell them what you think of them. That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
It's not a game, it's a rich thing.